I just really need to stay away from specific comments about evidence that could be involved in that trial. But to the extent I can, I will answer any other questions, because I'm sure you all have plenty. 25 years ago, Michael Morton was convicted of murdering his wife in this very courthouse. The jury's verdict was based on the evidence as we knew it at the time. DNA testing was not available then. It is now. In hindsight, the verdict was wrong. Mr. Morton was and is innocent of murdering his wife. The criminal justice system is designed to protect all of us, including criminal defendants. As district attorney at the time, and as woefully inadequate as I realize it is, I want to formally apologize for the system's failure to Mr. Morton and to every other person who was adversely affected by this verdict. Up until now, I did not think it was appropriate to comment on this case when it was pending before other district judges, but those proceedings have essentially ended. The mandate has been issued by the Court of Criminal Appeals. That case is over. So now I feel like I can. There have been a number of allegations made about professional conduct by the prosecutors, including me, in this case. In my heart, I know there was no misconduct whatsoever. After the passage of 25 years, obviously I cannot recall specific details of the trial, including pretrial discovery and conversations I had with Mr. Morton's lawyers before and after the trial. But I have been able to review the trial transcripts and documents from that files. And based on that review, I believe that the prosecutors fully complied with all the orders of the court and with the law on pretrial discovery as it existed in 1987. My hope and prayer is that Mr. Morton will be able to move forward with his life after these incredibly tragic events. Questions?
Ken, what about the credit card that was used in San Antonio after Christine Morton was killed? Did y'all look into that?
That's specifically what I cannot talk about, Brad. You know, that is still a piece of evidence in a live prosecution.
Judge, do you feel any personal responsibility for the death of Deborah Baker?
In terms of the overall case, I'm sick. You know, I was involved in a prosecution. We got it wrong. That's something I'm just going to have to deal with. How many other people this adversely affected? You know, that's something prosecutors and cops do every day. We make decisions to charge, to not charge. Sometimes they're right. Most of the time we hope they're right. But if we get it wrong, there's consequences, and it affects a lot of people. That's why we really try to get it right. And I know y'all are used to covering prosecutors and courts, but there really is a lot of pressure on prosecutors to get it right. And it's not something you can take lightly. I know we joke about it sometimes. We do things just because of the pressure. But the day I became a judge, as hard as this may be to believe, it was like the weight of the world went off my shoulders. I spent 22 years as a prosecutor, 16 and a half years as district attorney. Believe me, having the responsibility for 250,000 people on your shoulders day in and day out to make the decisions, to make them correctly, and make them correctly every time is an enormous responsibility.
Judge, how does a case
Jim?
like this impact how you feel about the death penalty?
I've been thinking about a lot of things, but I hadn't even had a chance to think about that
Well,
yet.
does this in any way
Jim?
remind you of the fallibility of the system and how final the death penalty is?
I'm not prepared to talk about the death penalty today.
Did you ever doubt Michael Morton's guilt when you prosecuted him in '87?
As a prosecutor, you don't announce ready if you have doubts about something. So you try to get it as right as you can, but you obviously have to convince yourself and make that decision. And so,
Judge, just not saying this is classic hindsight, but you're very adamant about no misconduct. After everything that we've heard in these court proceedings, evidence not being in folders, a reporter's notebook not being, how do you describe a lot of the inconsistencies that many people feel at the time should have been examined and examined thoroughly that were not, or evidence that mysteriously went disappeared.
I'm not sure that's a fair characterization of what there is. Obviously, I haven't been able to talk about it, so you've gotten sort of one version of it. Obviously, Jim Boutwell is long since dead. He would be the person who would know. But 25 years later, you know, it's just impossible to fire up your brain cells and try to remember something. I mean, I've been involved in hundreds of jury trials, hundreds of other cases where I would have talked to lawyers. I mean, probably thousands, and we're talking about 25 years ago. I mean, I literally have no ability to recall what happened, what I was thinking, why I made decisions in a trial 25 years ago.
Judge, without getting into the specifics of the case, in the deposition, Sergeant Wood, now retired, said that his case file was handed over to the district attorney. Copies were made, sent to your office, also sent to the sheriff. Where did those files go if they did not come to you?
I believe I've read the deposition and there's no such thing in there.
It says that copies were made and sent in your direction.
I'm sorry, the deposition doesn't say that.
It does say that in several places.
It talks about specific items.
Where did, negate that, where did that file go?
Where did what file go?
That file.
You know, I really can't answer that.
Can you tell us anything about the depositions you took part in and what we might expect to see when that deposition becomes public, what you talked about?
Well, it was 12 hours over 2 days. I think it runs almost 400 pages, which is about 2.5 days worth of cross-examination in a courtroom. So there's a lot, and it's all cross-examination.
Looking back now, Judge, what do you think you could or should have done differently to prevent this from happening?
Well, with hindsight, it obviously wouldn't have happened. We didn't have DNA testing, and I'm not quite sure what we could have done. I'd really like some time to reflect. I'd like some police officers with a lot of experience to look through the file and see what it is they would suggest.
Judge, looking back, do you see any evidence of tunnel vision on your part or the investigators?
I can't remember how I approached the case, what my thought process was. I'm just not capable of doing that 25 years later.
Have you
Some
apologized to
speculation.
Michael Morton personally?
He was in the deposition room for the first deposition. I wanted to talk to him. I think he wanted to talk to me. There was a lot of lawyers in the room. At this point, I think we got too many lawyers involved to do things like that. He did, well, I'm going to keep it private, but he did pass a word to me through my attorney, and frankly, his words were kind and gracious.
There's some speculation